Why is it so many daughters have eating disorders or disordered eating if they have a parent who is a narcissist or narcissistic? Well, for starters, narcissistic parents are very focused on perfectionism, and they're very critical of their children, particularly their daughters. Not always, sons too. Sons go through eating disorders as well. We just don't talk about it as much. A lot of us learn how to soothe with food. A lot of us learn how to binge eat by being taught. I'm one of those people. So I'll tell you why I ended up with an eating disorder and disordered eating, and still struggle to this day with my relationship with food, just in a different way at a lower level, because I figured out how to get a handle on that. It has taken me a really long time. So when I was 11, my mother started bringing me into her binge eating practices, and she made it fun. So we would go to Pumpernicks in Miami and get this delicious like Black Forest chocolate with lots of icing. To this day, I still really love that kind of cake. And I also really love birthday cake with buttercream frosting. Those are my, like, when I'm gonna go on a binge, I want cake. Which is crazy because you would think I would turn away from that, but no, it's delicious and I love it. And my mother would take me and we would go, we'd sit in the car. My very particular neat freak, controlled neat freak, using neatness for abuse mother. Like, she was the woman who, when you use the bathroom sink, you better make sure that the sink shines, that there's not a droplet of water, kind of neat. Raging mommy dearest in my closets, pulling everything out, kind of neat. But here she would turn into, you know, Jekyll and Hyde and all of that. She would turn into fun mommy. And fun mommy would take me after school and we'd get the cake and we'd sit in the car and we'd eat it with our hands. And she would be wonderful. She would be that audience mother, you know, the mother of the year that she would show everybody else. These were the few private moments where she would do that with me, until the cake was gone. And then she would berate me. We shouldn't have eaten all that. How could you eat all that? You should have stopped me. Like, it was my fault that she went and arranged this day and that I would get punished for it. And all throughout that time, and I have actually really young memories of people referring to my derrière as being fat. And it was supposed to be a cute comment. Like, my mother would do this thing where she would call me a tramp behind closed doors, and that would become the family saying, oh, it's so cute, Marnie is boy crazy, and then tie the two together. She would create the smear campaign, and other people would use different words within the family, and it would all be, if you know, you know, it would all be tied back to what she was telling me about myself, and then she would utilize that as, see, everybody knows that you're a tramp. And the same thing, she would say I had, you know, a fat ass, and everybody else would say something about, you know, a juicy derrière or something. I don't remember what they used to say, but it wasn't the same terms as what my mother would use. So my mother made me very body conscious at a very, very early age. She would also compare me to girls who were extremely thin, and some of which, who, looking backwards, I bet also had eating disorders. And one of the only 2 times my mother ever complimented me in my lifetime, and one was really a compliment to herself, was when I was going through the height of an eating disorder, like actual eating disorder, not this sort of disordered eating where I would do it here and there and I was body dysmorphic and then I would pull myself back in line and it wouldn't go on long and it didn't become like a whole thing. This was a thing. I weighed between 80 and 90 pounds and my mother told me how good I looked. So I got acceptance for it. And the other thing is, when you're a child who has no control over their environment, one of the things we find control through is food. Sometimes that control includes how we soothe through food. I soothe with food for sure. And so when I'm triggered, and I may not know why I'm triggered. There's certain things that change for me behaviorally that I know, oh, something's happened. And I've learned to pay attention to it differently now and handle it differently. So my three main things are, I will want to eat cake, like a whole thing, at least, maybe even more, until the point of I can feel the food up here and there's only a little cake left and I'm gonna finish it, damn it, because tomorrow's another day kind of thing. The other thing is when I will go to sleep at night, I have extreme shortness of breath. Like I can't settle and I can't catch my breath. And the other one is shopping. And back in the day, I used to shop to the point where there would be nothing left in the bank to pay my bills, including my rent. I do not do any of that anymore. Shortness of breath, I can't control, but everything else I can. And the shortness of breath, I have found ways to deal with it. In fact, it's the same thing I do across the board. When I am in a triggered state and I see my behavior change like that, I reflect on what it is that might have created that. Maybe I had an interaction with someone and I use that as my early warning system and I trust it. And if I've had an interaction with someone and I haven't recognized that there was something in there, it will make me more thoughtful about it. It's my way of taking inventory. Sometimes it's a date on the calendar tied to a memory because the body keeps the score. Sometimes it's something I can't even track back to. And in all three situations, after I've taken stock, I do the same thing each and every time. I talk to little Marnie and I give her love and acknowledgement. So it kind of goes like, hey, little Marnie, I know you're jumping up and down. Something has hurt you today. And I'm so sorry. And we're going to get through this together. And we're going to have cake. And we're going to spend a little money. But this is how we're going to do it. We're going to order maybe one, maybe two pieces of cake. We're not going to expose ourselves to an entire cake. And we'll go and buy something cheap and cheerful, something that fits in our budget. And we're also going to shop somewhere where we can return those items should we fall a little bit off of our budget. And that works for me. And now where I'm at, one piece of cake will pretty much do it. Every now and again I need to, but nothing else. Like I'm done. I'm not going on like, apps and ordering more food. That I would have done that 2, 3, 4 years ago. And with the money thing, I stick to my budget really well. And sometimes I leave without buying anything at all. It's something in giving myself permission for it. And what I make sure that I never do, even if I don't succeed in my plan, is I never punish myself for it. I will never speak to myself the way that my mother spoke to me. I went no contact with her for a reason. I went no contact to not expose myself to that re-traumatization and criticism over and over and over and over again, right? So I really make sure that I'm very careful in how I treat myself in those moments. And all of that has also translated into a much lower tolerance for toxic relationships because I'm no longer toxic to myself. And if I start down the path of maybe a little bit of, self, not so much love there and say something like, oh, that was really stupid, I pull myself out quickly and I give myself grace for that too. So anyway, I know I went off the mark a little bit here, but I felt like we need to go a little bit more in depth for people who are struggling with triggers and eating disorders and disordered eating and all of that. And also I would like to ask anybody out there who is struggling, if you want to share, what is it that was your trigger point that you feel has contributed to the way that you eat, body dysmorphia, that sort of thing. Image is everything with narcissistic parents. Perfection is everything for everyone else because they certainly aren't striving for any sort of perfection as far as becoming or being the kind of parent that we all deserved.